the cube. Now duplicate this cube by Shift D and scale it down. Now scale it down on the Z axis to reduce its size accordingly. Now in the physics properties, go to the fluid. The bigger box will act as the domain, liquid domain. Domain type will be liquid and resolution will be 100. It will give more detail to our splash. And the time scale would be 0.5. Time scale is used to slower the motion of liquid or any domain type that. Now to this smaller cube, add the fluid and add the type flow and flow type liquid. And keep the end frame to 25 and make other necessary changes. Now bake all. You can see that there is a flow of liquid in the smaller box. Now add an icosphere which will act as the obstacle, or you can say effector, to make splash or create splash in the water. Now click on I to add the location keyframe at 10th frame to the icosphere. And put the icosphere down below the domain and add another location keyframe. Now give the effector fluid property to the icosphere, which will act as the obstacle to create that rising splash in our water body. And keep the sampling subsurface to 5. It will make the transition smooth for those objects that move faster. So it will be a smoother transition from one point to another for the effector, that is the icosphere. As you can see, that number of additional samples to be taken between frames to improve quality of fast moving objects, effector objects. So as I have told you earlier, it is for the smooth transition between different frames of an effector object. And surface thickness, to give thickness to the effector object so that it will aid in the creation of that splash. But still the price of splash is not very high. So we need to add the force field to the effector to aid that splash. Change the shape of the force field to surface. And maximum distance to Maximum distance is basically it will create a force field around the effector, and which is very important for the intense or very detailed water splash. The more the distance, the more higher will be the splash. But it will also require, yes, as you can see that there is a slight rise in the splash, but there is one thing that is required, that is the strength. We need to increase the strength of the effector to make it more powerful, and also the distance. So alternate the values of both the strength and distance according to your requirement, because I think it the values varies according to the version of the blender. But still, one slight change is required in the particle properties of the domain to aid the uprising of the splash. That is stimulation me to epic and narrow bandwidth to 10. And bake all. As you can see that the rise of the splash and its width is very large. So at this point we need to make some changes in the values of our particle system and of both our force field values. So first of all we need to decrease the distance and the strength around the force field. Alright, so we will reduce the strength from 250 to 100, and then we will reduce the maximum distance accordingly. At this point, to get the right kind of details in our water splash, we need to make few adjustments in both the particle properties and the force field properties. With these, by testing and trying different kinds of values, we can get that required ascending of the splash. Further reduce the strength to 50, and now try to bake it out. Yes, the rise in the splash has decreased, but it is very much flat, and the width of the circumference of the circle of the water splash is way more than we want. Let's just click on the mesh to convert our particles, water particles, into a solid mesh. Alright. I'm just testing and trying the alternate values to get the desired result. Well, on your part, you also need to test out different values, different numbers, so that you can get your desired result. Because what I have observed that these values work differently in different versions. So we get a decent ascent in the splash, alright. But I think the number of frames need to be reduced because we don't want this kind of mesh. We only want that uprising water splash. So we try to reduce the uppress factor. Uppress factor basically is a factor with which the water shoots up after converting into mesh. And now I'm trying to reduce the narrow bandwidth. Timing, I don't think we need to change the time scale because the speed of the water splash is required enough. So guys, after trying out different values behind the scene, I have found my perfect set of numbers. The power should be 5 and the maximum distance 0.2. Basically, the function of the power is the more the power, the less will be the uprising of the splash. So to control that, we need to, power is an important factor. Alright. Guys, let's add some material to our water. Okay, so for this, go to the shader editor. I have already added the material, so I can give you a preview or the description. So I have added the glass BSDF instead of principal BSDF and connect it to the surface of the material output and volume absorption to the volume of the material output. Now join the areas and let's check in the viewport, in the render viewport. Alright, so I have already added the environment. You can add the suitable environment that you want to add. So let's change the environment. So let's go to the environment now. So I have added the environment Elon Reed Park. So with that you can see the crystal clear texture of water, glassy and transparent. You can add any suitable or the available environment. It's just that the condition is the transparency and the glossiness of water should be there, and I will be checking it in the transparent environment too. And also I have reduced the bake frame from 1 to 15. Alright, and let's just uh, make the icosphere of the pebble, you can say that, non-visible in the viewports and render, because I want the splash but not the icosphere to show in the render. So guys, that's it. This is all today for the splash of the water tutorial. I will be back with another amazing tutorial very soon. So if you like my work, please subscribe.